A young girl runs through the cold Montana night, seeking safety from a dark secret. When a lonely rancher discovers her, what happens next will shock you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Let's get started. The evening sun was bleeding across the Montana sky, stretching long shadows over the rolling plains and painting the ranch in hues of burnt gold and soft amber. The air smelled of hay, dust, and the distant hum of cicadas, the kind of quiet that only wide-open land could hold. Ethan Cole had just finished mending the last stretch of fence when he noticed a small figure by the edge of the barn, crouched near the water trough. His first thought was that it might be a lost calf. But as he drew closer, he saw it was a child, a girl, thin and trembling, her hair tangled, her dress streaked with dirt and dried tears. Ethan stopped a few feet away, his boots crunching against gravel. He was a man of few words and fewer visitors, the kind of rancher who preferred the company of horses to people. But the sight of that girl, her bare feet, her frightened eyes, cut through the evening calm like a knife. "Hey there," he said softly, lowering his voice. "You all right, sweetheart?" She didn't move at first, only hugged her knees tighter. After a long silence, she lifted her face just enough for him to see the bruise darkening her cheek. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Please, don't make me go home." The words hit him harder than a stampede. Ethan knelt down slowly, careful not to startle her. "What's your name?" he asked. The girl swallowed, her voice barely more than a breath. "Lily," she said. "My name's Lily." He gave a small nod, keeping his eyes gentle. "That's a pretty name, Lily. You lost?" She shook her head, strands of hair falling over her face. "No," she said quietly. "I ran away." Ethan felt a chill despite the warm evening air. Kids didn't run away for no reason. Not out here, miles from the nearest town, with nothing but dry fields and coyotes for company. He stood and glanced toward the dirt road, a long ribbon of dust and heat stretching toward the horizon. Whoever she was running from wouldn't find her easily, but out here nothing stayed hidden forever. "You hungry?" he asked, trying to sound casual. She hesitated, then nodded. Ethan led her toward the house, the old wooden porch creaking under their steps. Inside, he poured her a glass of milk and set out a plate of leftover stew. She ate quickly, like someone who hadn't had a real meal in days. Watching her, Ethan felt something twist in his chest, a mix of anger and helplessness. When she was done, he asked gently, "You want to tell me why you ran?" Lily's small hands tightened around the glass. For a long time she said nothing, her eyes fixed on the floor. Then, in a trembling voice, she whispered, "Because my father sneaks into my room every night." The words hung in the air like smoke, choking the silence out of the room. Ethan froze, the sound of the clock ticking loud in his ears. He wanted to believe he had misheard, that maybe she meant something else. But one look at her, the fear etched into her face, the way she couldn't meet his eyes, told him everything he needed to know. Ethan leaned back slowly, his jaw tightening. "Lily," he said softly, "does your mama know?" The girl shook her head, her eyes glistening. "She's gone. Daddy said she left because she didn't love me anymore." Her voice broke on the last word, and Ethan had to look away for a moment, his heart pounding. He'd seen a lot in his 43 years. Droughts, dead cattle, neighbors ruined by storms and debt. But nothing like this. Nothing that made him feel such a fierce, protective anger. "Did anyone else see you come here?" he asked. She shook her head again. "I just walked. I didn't know where to go. I just kept walking until I saw your lights." Ethan nodded, trying to think clearly. The nearest sheriff's office was 15 miles away, and his phone line had been acting up all week. If the man she was running from realized she was gone, he'd come looking, maybe tonight. Out here, you couldn't count on quick help. You had to be your own law until the real one showed up. He stood and walked to the window, scanning the dusky fields. Everything was still, too still. The wind had died, and even the crickets seemed to have gone silent. He turned back to Lily. "You're safe here," he said firmly. "No one's gonna hurt you while you're under my roof." Her eyes widened, a flicker of disbelief crossing her face. "You promise?" she asked. Ethan felt the weight of that question more than any he'd ever been asked. A man could make a lot of promises in his life, to his wife before she died, to the land he worked, to himself when things got bad. But this one felt different. This one mattered. "I promise," he said quietly. "You have my word." He found an old quilt, one his late wife had made years ago, and spread it on the couch. "You can sleep here tonight," he told her. "We'll figure things out in the morning." As she curled up under the blanket, her breathing finally beginning to steady, Ethan sat in his old armchair by the fire. He stared into the flames, trying to make sense of it all. He thought of his wife, Claire, gone 5 winters now. She had always said he had a soft heart under all that stubbornness. Maybe she'd been right. Out here, where the land could kill a man if he let his guard down, kindness sometimes felt like a weakness. But looking at the sleeping girl, Ethan knew it wasn't weakness. It was duty. Hours passed. The fire burned low and the house settled into silence. Ethan's mind raced with what-ifs. What if the man came looking? What if the sheriff couldn't get here in time? He checked his rifle, made sure it was loaded, and kept it within reach. Outside, the wind picked up again, rustling through the tall grass. He thought he saw movement by the fence line, just a shadow, maybe an animal. But he couldn't shake the feeling that someone, somewhere out there in the dark, was watching. He sat there until dawn began to break, the first pale light creeping across the floorboards. The girl was still asleep, her face peaceful now, her small hands tucked beneath her chin. Ethan stood slowly, stretching his tired limbs. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for certain. He wouldn't let that child be taken back to hell. Not while he was still breathing. The sun rose over the Montana hills, and with it came a quiet, grim resolve in Ethan Cole's heart. The kind a man gets only when he knows a fight's coming, and he's ready to meet it head-on. Ethan hadn't slept a wink. The long Montana night had stretched on forever, filled with the kind of silence that made every creak in the floorboards sound like a gunshot. When the first light touched the hills, he rose from his chair and stepped onto the porch. The air was sharp and cold, biting through his flannel shirt. He scanned the land with a cautious eye. The fences, the old barn, the dirt road winding toward nowhere. Nothing seemed out of place, but his gut told him otherwise. Out here, instincts were worth more than words, and his were screaming that trouble was on its way. Inside, Lily was still asleep on the couch, wrapped tightly in the quilt. For a moment, Ethan allowed himself to breathe. There was something peaceful about the sight. A child finally resting after God knows how long of fear and pain. He quietly fixed breakfast, frying eggs and bacon, the smell filling the small kitchen. When she woke, she blinked at him uncertainly, as though afraid he might disappear if she looked too long. "Morning," he said softly. "You eat up. We've got things to do today." She nodded, her voice small but steadier than the night before. For the first time, Ethan thought he saw a spark of trust. After breakfast, he called the sheriff's office using the old landline that crackled with static. Sheriff Tom Grady answered on the 3rd ring, his familiar gravelly voice cutting through the noise. "Cole, been a while." "What's going on?" Ethan didn't waste time. He explained everything. How Lily had shown up, what she'd said, the bruises, the fear. The line went quiet for a long moment before Tom spoke again, his tone tight. "Jesus, that's heavy, Ethan. You did right calling me. I'll head out your way soon as I can. Don't let her out of your sight, you hear?" Ethan promised he wouldn't. He hung up and looked out the window again, watching the road like a hawk. By mid-afternoon, clouds were gathering over the plains, the sky turning the color of old pewter. The wind had picked up sweeping dust across the yard. Ethan busied himself stacking firewood and tending to chores, though his mind was elsewhere. Every truck that passed on the distant road made his stomach knot. Around 4 o'clock, he saw Lily standing by the fence looking toward the hills. "You okay?" he asked, walking over. She hesitated, then pointed toward the horizon. "That's where my house is. Over there past the creek." Her voice wavered. "Do you think he's looking for me?" Ethan didn't want to lie. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think he is. But he's not getting you back." As evening fell, the clouds split open and rain began to pour, drumming hard on the tin roof. Ethan lit the fireplace and checked his rifle one more time. The dogs, usually calm, were restless, pacing, growling low under their breath. It was around midnight when the barking started in earnest, sharp, and furious. Ethan's heart kicked into overdrive. He grabbed the rifle, nodded to Lily to stay put, and stepped out onto the porch. Through the sheets of rain, he saw the glare of headlights bouncing down the dirt road. A truck. An old Chevy, black and mud-splattered, roaring toward the house like a beast let loose. The truck stopped with a screech, tires spitting gravel. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, his movements unsteady with drink and rage. His face came into focus under the porch light. Rough, sunburned skin, a week-old beard, eyes glassy and mean. "You got something that's mine!" he shouted, slamming the door behind him. Ethan raised his voice just enough to be heard over the storm. "You mean Lily?" The man sneered, stumbling closer. "That's my daughter, and you're damn right I do. Hand her over before I make you regret it." Ethan didn't move. He kept the rifle low but ready, his finger brushing the trigger guard. "She's not going anywhere with you. Not tonight, not ever." For a moment, neither man moved. Lightning flashed, lighting up the distance, and in that brief second, Ethan saw the glint of a gun in the man's hand. "Don't do this," Ethan warned. "Put it down." But the drunk's pride was louder than his fear. "You think you can take my kid, ranch boy?" he snarled. "You got no right." Ethan's voice hardened. "You lost that right when you laid a hand on her." The man raised his gun, shouting something Ethan would never forget. "She's mine!" And that was when the sirens wailed in the distance, slicing through the rain like salvation. Sheriff Grady's cruiser came flying up the road, lights blazing red and blue across the storm-soaked fields. The man froze as the sheriff's headlights hit him full in the face. "Drop it, Rick!" Tom Grady shouted, stepping out with his pistol drawn. "Drop the damn gun!" Rick turned, rage still boiling in his eyes, but Ethan saw the moment fear crept in, the moment he realized he'd lost. The man's arm faltered just enough for Tom to close the distance, shove him to the ground, and wrench the weapon from his hand. Within seconds, the cuffs were on. Rick was shouting, cursing, spitting rain and fury. "You can't take her! She's mine!" he screamed. Tom yanked him to his feet. "You're done, Rick. You've been done a long time." Lily had come to the doorway, the quilt pulled tight around her shoulders. Her eyes were wide, tears cutting down her face as she watched her father being shoved into the sheriff's car. Ethan lowered his rifle and exhaled, the weight of the night finally settling on him. Sheriff Grady turned to him. "You all right, Cole?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, just tired." Tom clapped him on the shoulder. "You did the right thing. You saved that kid's life." Ethan looked at Lily, then back at the sheriff. "No," he said quietly. "I just gave her a chance to start over. The rest's up to her." When the cruiser disappeared down the road, the storm began to ease. The rain softened to a drizzle and the air smelled clean again. Ethan stood on the porch a long time, watching the dawn break over the hills. Inside, Lily had fallen asleep again, this time without fear. He sat by the fire until the light filled the room, the rifle resting beside him, the world finally quiet. The land outside glistened in the morning sun, washed, renewed. Somewhere in that stillness, Ethan knew he'd done something good, something right, even if it came with scars he'd carry forever. Weeks passed. The sheriff helped place Lily with a foster family in town, good people who promised to keep her safe. She visited the ranch every Sunday after church, riding horses and helping Ethan feed the cattle. She laughed more now, a sound Ethan hadn't realized he'd missed in his home until she brought it back. Life on the ranch settled into its old rhythm, but it wasn't the same. There was a lightness there now, something warm, something worth keeping. And every evening, when the sun dipped low over the Montana plains, Ethan Cole would look toward the horizon and whisper a silent promise. That as long as he lived, no child under his roof would ever be afraid again.